College Station Kid, how we doing? How you feeling? With Hayes and Santander in contract years, do you trade them at the deadline and get some pitching depth? It's an interesting one. It's an interesting thought. Personally, it's definitely be on the table, but I think it's kind of how the progression of some of these younger guys when the season starts, because as much as we just were talking about, as exciting as it is for these young players, how much drop initially, if there is some struggle, to guys that are playing at a certain level. And Austin Hayes and Tony Taters have played at a certain level for this team and also have a leadership and veteran component right now that was a big, there's a lot of reasons last year, but they were stabilizing forces last year for the guys. You guys with that? Do you guys see it differently on the Ravens? Kevin, I'll start with you shaking your head.
Yeah, I think that you just have to see how it goes, but I also think there's they've had value for years for this team. And I think that with guys like Stowers and Cowser and all these younger players, if you move, and I'm not saying, people are saying trade them right now, like tomorrow, but if you move them early in the season or at the deadline, you get that pitching depth, and all of a sudden a guy hits a slump and you don't have a guy like a steady veteran who you can reinsert in that lineup, who can give you production. It is a risk. Plus, I think that they're important to the Orioles' contention window, where they're not necessarily long-term pieces the way that Adley or Gunnar or Jackson are, but they're still pieces that can help the Orioles win a championship. So I'm not gonna ship them off at the first sight of a pitcher, where I think the Orioles do need pitching depth, maybe when it comes to injuries and how those go, with maybe a Means coming back and whatnot. But I still think they're deep enough where they can just play it the way that they want and not feel rushed into, we have to trade away this really solid player because we have young depth, because it can just go so many different ways. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not rushing to do it, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, people are not going to like me. I have been on the trade Anthony Santander train for a few years now, and it has nothing to do with his production. It has everything to do with, I thought that's who you get the most value for. But I think we actually just had it up for a second. I think Robert put it perfectly. Now that these guys, it looks like we're going into the season with them, it's really hard if they're playing well, you can't move on to if they're looking like they're taking that step of this. We are going to be key contributors in a playoff run, a World Series run. I think at this point, it's going to be hard to move on from a Tony or an Austin Hayes if they're playing well, because like you guys have said, they are steady contributors. I think we've kind of gotten past the point of, I was always, when it was deep in the rebuild, I was like, Anthony Santander is our best value guy. Like, that's, if we want to get prospects, that was the guy. But I think we are almost past that point now. I think it's to the point where Tony's playing so well. He's one of the best switch hitters in baseball. If you can't get a pitcher that can help you immediately in the now, I just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw people even having in the rebuild that conversation about Mullins, and it's like now we were not even having that conversation because he is that valuable. So it's a balance, because the Orioles window is now, and it's also 10 years from now. Yeah. So you have to balance out how much you want to go for it right now in 2024, which I think they absolutely should go for it right now. But you also have to balance out, okay, Santander's not a 10-year down the line piece. Yeah. Hayes is not a 10-year down the line piece. So if you're trying to move on for the value they have, when does that decrease? And again, it's a problem Mike Elias has. It's a good problem to have. Yeah. But again, a problem in terms of where do you find the playing time too? If Santander is playing well, but then Cowser plays well in his at-bats, who do you play? Who do you not? So a lot of interesting conversations, I'm sure, even during the season, about guys going through slumps and what positions of need come even with injuries.
Hey, that's a great point right there. And Zach, you might have pulled it up there from Orioles Birdwatcher. And I believe Orioles Birdwatcher said he's from Thailand, by the way.
That's
awesome. That's awesome.
I believe. Shout out. And we love the fact. And this is, we're with our Orioles segment right now. We told you it was coming. Don't you worry. Oh, Kevin.
No, that was the last one to stop.
You're still not clapping, Kevin. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So Orioles Birdwatcher said thing about Santander. The switch bat, just like you mentioned, Zach, is so valuable. I get he may be at his peak in terms of value, but I want him on the team.